local group trying to get its hands on a tugboat from World War II that was built right here in Central Florida.
The problem is, it's all the way over in Europe. Fox 35's Sydney Cameron shows us how they plan to get it back here to Florida.
It's our holy grail. It's that rare.
It's this World War II tugboat built in West Volusia County in 1944, then given to the U.S. Army and believed to be used at the D-Day invasion of Normandy.
Discovered half a dozen still existed around the world, and yet this is the only one that still has the original engine, and the original superstructure is largely intact.
But it's stuck nearly 5,000 miles away in Sweden, says history buff Daniel Friend. A couple owns it, but because of the pandemic, they're looking to part with it. Now Friend, who's president of the nonprofit DeLand Historic Trust Incorporated, wants to bring ST479 home after 77 years.
This is the last of only 29 tugboats built on Lake Beresford during World War II by people in West Volusia and the DeLand area.
The U.S. Army used tugboats built on U.S. coastal towns during World War II to move loads all over the world. If the nonprofit can get the tugboat to make the voyage from Sweden to Volusia County, they want to put it along the St. Johns River, either at Edstone Park or here at Lake Monroe Park. It will be part of a World War II monument to honor the 44 West Volusia service members killed during World War II.
We're getting strong donations from the community. We need more. We need corporate support.
Sydney Cameron, Fox 35 News.
He's worked in real estate. He's been an educator, but it's in retirement that Dan Friend, president of the nonprofit DeLand Historic Trust Incorporated, is making history. WESH 2's Claire Metz reports Friend is closing in on his dream to bring a World War II tugboat made in DeLand back to DeLand.
This is the only U.S. Army ST tugboat to ever come back to America.
And this is it, the ST479, the Tiger, 86 feet long, 23 feet wide, 140 tons of steel. There were 550 STs, small tugs, sent into World War II, 29 of them made in DeLand's Lake Beresford area, including the Tiger. Dan Friend believes it was built in time to be used in Normandy.
90% probability they used every one they could get over there that was built in time. They had to have them to build on the docks off of the French coast, to recover bodies. I mean, there were so many things.
Friend's passion for all things military, he's also the city's military curator, led him to discover the Tiger in private ownership in Sweden. The owners offered it to Dan, but he had to raise $200,000 to cargo the Tiger across the Atlantic.
I found an angel, a local patriotic angel, who said, I will give you $200,000 to bring the boat home to Jacksonville.
The Tiger's now berthed in Green Cove Springs. Dan and others working to clean it up and get the tug to DeLand under its own power, down the St. Johns, across Lake George. Dan says the tug won't be just the pride of the city and county, it's a national treasure. The lone tug to return from battle, Dan Friend, its warrior.
I'm known to be tenacious about things, and I just kept plugging along and talking to people, and it happened.
Though his angel, the anonymous donor, did the lion's share, getting that tug back to the States, Dan Friend says he's now working through his nonprofit, the DeLand Historic Trust, Inc., to finish the job, get the tug back to DeLand and into a static monument. In DeLand, Volusia County, Claire Metz, WESH 2 News.
Well, a piece of history making its return. A World War II era tugboat created in DeLand will soon be back in Volusia County. Quite the story here. The boat was just brought back to the U.S. from Europe.
The project more than a year in the making. News 6's Molly Reed shows us how leaders are preparing this piece of the past for its future.
DeLand City Commission started their conversations this morning about where the tugboat could go now that it's back in the U.S. Right now, their hope is to try to put it in a park near the river, but first it's going to be a matter of getting it to DeLand.
It's a completely unknown part of American World War II history. The tug that's coming back is the only one to ever return home out of the 550 U.S. Army World War II ST tugboats.
And its name is the ST Tiger, one of 29 of those tugboats built in a factory on Lake Beresford in DeLand. Dan Friend, president of the DeLand Historic Trust, says it was likely used in Normandy.
To build on the docks off of the the French coast to recover bodies. I mean, there were so many things. The tugs were essential.
Friends started research on the tugboats decades ago, even creating a website about them. About a year ago, he got a call from a couple in Sweden. They had the Tiger and would give it to him, but he had to pay for transport. The group started raising money. Then what he calls an anonymous angel came along.
Who said, I will give you $200,000 to bring the boat home to Jacksonville. And after that, you're on your own.
On July 10th, it was brought back to the U.S. Right now, it's being held outside of Jacksonville. Friend and the other volunteers working on it will know next week if it can come down by itself.
We're going to bring her home on her own power. We're 90% certain. It's a diesel. And those old diesels, after 20 years, they crank right up.
How soon it gets to DeLand also depends on funding. The DeLand Historic Trust is fundraising again for paint, transportation, and monument costs. But Friend says one way or another, the Tiger is coming home.
It goes past the city of DeLand. This is the only US Army ST tugboat to ever come back to America, to the very place where it was built. The only one. That's extraordinary.
In DeLand, Volusia County, I'm Molly Reed getting results, News 6.
This is the earliest photograph we have of tugboat construction. There they are, down near the water. Earliest known photo, May 15, 1942. So within 6 months of the attack on December 7, we were making tugboats here. And the spark plug of this whole thing was a guy by the name of B.D. Olson, who's in the middle of the upper photograph, who was portrayed so eloquently by our very own Tom Roberts in the stage presentation a couple of years ago. I have that on video, and he just did a wonderful job. Of course, I wrote the script, but you know, he did a great job, and it's memorable. But B.D. Olson was incredible. And after World War II, it would continue on with other investors as the Olson Corporation for many, many years. They actually had one military tugboat contract after World War II that turned out very strangely. We don't have time for that today. Moving on. When I talk about a big photograph of people, well, here they are. And yeah, this is a panorama that we put together into 3 components. It was about umpteen feet wide, and we have the original, but we've shot it down. We can put it all on one screen. There is the coveted E award that the AMC earned. Once again, commendable in how quickly and how well those tugboats were built, even though they were never designed to be watertight or to be used in open ocean conditions. Of course, the Army ignored all of those things and used them precisely in those areas, which is why some people lost their lives. Next, please. Here it is during construction. Some of the boats up there, of course, these buildings are all gone except for one. One small building still exists from World War II. Everything else is gone. On the bottom are some of the tugboats that were actually put into the water, and then they would finish the fitting while they were floating around. They could start working on the next batch after that and keep production going. They would produce 29 all-steel tugboats during World War II. And I think they were working on a final 3. They ended up going to the United Nations. Good production for such a small facility. Next, please. They built them in batches, 6 to 9 tugs at a time. All steel. It was fantastic. They could bring the steel in on the railroad system, build these things quickly. They could build an all-steel tug in a few days, and it would take weeks, if not months, to build the same thing in wood because it had to be handled differently. It had to be aged properly, it had to be treated properly, and Building a wood tug was a time-consuming process. Next, please. First two, they're being launched September 7, 1942, 9 months after Pearl Harbor, and we're putting tugboats into the water. Now, they're getting ready to go into the water sideways. I think I have the photograph of that, but just in case that I don't, because they had a fairly deep draft, and these boats never had the engines installed. They were towed out of Lake Beresford into the St. Johns River, all the way up to Jacksonville, where they would install the engines, and they would sink down another 2 feet. At that point, they had a 9-foot draft, but they were in deep water. They were handed over to the Army, and they were great for inter-harbor use. The Army used them for everything. Next, please. Here's one at launch. Sideways. Couldn't put them in nose first like you would expect to see. Nope. 7-foot depth right there. They put it in nose first. They had to dig them out. Next, please. Unique photo. Now, this is moving under its own power, so either somebody went up to Jacksonville and took some images, or it came back down for a special hoorah because all the guys have their best suits on that are on board. Next, please. Great book, Tug of War, $5 on eBay or Amazon. Joe Richards, I met some people that knew him, talked a little bit about what an amazing guy he was. This book details the incredible adventures of this guy and one tugboat, one all-steel tugboat that was built exactly to the same pattern as the ones we built on Lake Beresford. And he got a job as a captain. Fun story. He's interviewing, and the officer says, "Well, why should we hire you? You don't have a whole lot of experience." And he literally said, "Is there a line behind me?" And the answer was no, because everyone knew better. Even getting crew for these top-heavy tugs was a chore, and they had to lie a little bit. Okay, but here was his task. Okay, take this all-steel top-heavy tugboat down to the Panama Canal, get through the Panama Canal, come all the way back up to LA, and then we want you to come from LA. We're going to mount some heavy machine guns and ammo boxes on top of your already top-heavy area, and then we're not going to give you a chronometer and send you 2,400 miles to Hawaii. You'll have a radio. The fact that he survived is incredible. And he's the one that historically I look at as to complete verification that these things were so top heavy, they should never, ever have been out in the ocean. Next, please. Now, tugboats, how did they get to Europe? Well, they were picked up by this crane, which was a World War I battleship known as the Kearsarge. And they turned it into a crane ship in New York, and this thing could lift 100 tons. Well, that's kind of what a tugboat weighs. Next photograph. There they are. Look at them. 2 little tugboats on the back of a Liberty ship headed for Europe. Okie dokie, good idea. That worked well, and they got about 50 of them over there before somebody had a better idea. Next. There were a batch of 8 tugs, 672 through 677. 2 of them capsized and were lost in the North Atlantic. And the crew were probably cursing the day they ever got on the thing. 676 and 677 actually survived World War II, even though they were in something known as Convoy New York 119. The book is on the left. It's $15 on Amazon. It's an unbelievable tale of survival at sea. which just happens to include 15 small tugboats, including 2 of ours built here on Lake Beersford. Next, please. This chart was in the book, and this is how I verified the numbers. They had them numbered. And some really, really smart Army officers said, look, we're wasting all that space on the back of those Liberty ships we can use for other things. Why don't we tow these small tugboats over to Europe behind a large tug? It worked really well in the summer. Then they tried it at the end of September. 4 small tugs towing 3 to 4 tugs and barges at 6 knots. It would take them a month to get across. It's kind of like, hey, let's go walk to Europe. Next, please. ST474. There's a crew, wonderful photograph of a DeLand boat. I need to finish the story really quick about the convoy. The second time they went out, they managed to get crew for all the tugboats. The weather got worse day by day by day. And the waves got to be 50 feet and then 60 feet. And they're so far out, they can't possibly turn around and go back. They might as well just do their best to get through it. Well, 200-foot tow ropes from barge to tug to whatever, and they were all just being towed except the tug at the front. Well, with the wave action, what would happen is the ropes, they would get out of alignment, and whenever they snap back together, it would just pull the tug under. They didn't have time to correct. They lost 1 tug and the crew, about 8 people on each one. They lost a second tug. The waves are not letting up. They lost a third tug. By this time, the tugboat crews that are still alive are somewhat demoralized by all of this. The commander stopped the convoy. He'd already made an emergency call to England saying help, and 2 ships came out. The English Coast Guard, whatever their name for that is. And once they got out into the water, they radioed the commander and said, hey, mate, this is just too much. We're going home. And the commander said, Roger, click. So even the British couldn't help. The commander of that convoy made the right call. They had enough fuel to load up the small tugs. From that point on, they would not need refueling. He cut them loose. And the remaining 12 made it. With the help of the USS Mason, a destroyer escort, they had an all-black crew that was assigned to get the 12 in. The waves had started to break their destroyer in half. They came out with welding torches and saved their own ship, and then turned around to shepherd the 12 tugboats into safety. Unbelievable story. Get the book. Next. The most famous of our tugboats, ST344, undoubtedly was at D-Day Normandy off the coast at 7 o'clock when the invasion started. They would not go in until the next day, but they were there off the coast, taking the risks along with everyone else. And then they built the docks off of the coast of Normandy that really are what helped us make that invasion a success. 9,000 men died on D-Day. They died for a reason. When the docks were built, Men and materiel just got poured into that area. And this little tugboat helped make it happen. Built right here in DeLand. 6 weeks later, off the coast of Cherbourg, France, it hit a mine. Most of the crew would have been killed. If you were below decks, you weren't coming back up. Too hard to get out. I have a photograph in the museum of one young man that I referenced out. His photograph is there, and he was killed on that sad day on DeLand ST479. Next, please. There it is again. She hit a mine off the coast. Don't know how many were exactly killed. A few would have survived. 16 of these warboats definitely went to Europe of the 29. 3 capsized, but at least 6 still exist in the world. Next. Okay, now I'm in contact with the guy, and I'm still involved with him on Facebook, but I haven't heard a whole lot about his offer. He made an offer a few years ago to put Tiger ST479 in his will to go to DeLand Historic Trust for us to return it back home, which I'd love to do. But it's in Sweden. So if you happen to have $500,000 and, you know, the tug is free, but getting it here, but I'm thinking it could be a National Geographic special, okay? Old tug comes home from World War II. Wouldn't that be cool? All right, so let me know if you're ready to do this. I'm all for going to Sweden. I like Sweden. I've been there. It's a nice place.